All right, everybody, and welcome to BCB Live, the safest station in the nation. Drive Safe Dave here, along with Double Check Tail in studio. We got Sir Rick out there in San Diego at the American Trucking Association on assignment, doing a little bit of elbow rubbing, a little bit of stuff out there to make it better for everybody, trying to find out the new, the best, what's going on in the trucking world. What do you think about the ATA in San Diego?
I think the ATA is a great organization. I think it's wonderful that we have Rick out there representing our organization.
BCB Live, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
and Robinson Melville's getting some guests to come on, be able to share the information live and update, breaking news type stuff.
I'm a little upset because he's out there and, he's out there elbowing with some of the biggest names in trucking, and they are asking about BCB Live. They're, and they don't have Drive Safe Dave out there to give out autographs along there and take selfies. But I'm going to let you know, somebody's got to man the news desk, right? I mean, somebody has to hold up, the dam before it falls. I mean, we can't all be pretty faces, right? We got to.
That's right. I got to come in here and hold up this chair, and you're holding up Rick's chair. I mean, I get it, buddy. So.
All right. So anyway, we got Sir Rick out there in San Diego. Maybe he bounces in, maybe bounces out. We were having some technical difficulties trying to feed from him, but I will tell you that a lot's going on out there at the ATA. Let me tell you who spoke on Saturday, and that was Robin Hutchison, who is the in charge of the FMCSA. She spoke yesterday, and one of the things that she brought up that we've been talking about all along is truck parking. All right, I'm tired of talking about it. I need some of it.
We've been talking about it for how many years now?
Yeah, absolutely. But the nice thing is it is a conversation, and Hutchison is talking about it. She spoke about it at the ATA. She spoke about other concerns, of course, supply chain and fuel and some of the other things. But I'll tell you, it's nice to know that the FMCSA is looking at it and trying to find out a lot more about it. I do know that the Secretary of the Transportation, Steve Buttigieg, will be there, I think, tomorrow. Or I believe it's tomorrow. He'll be speaking tomorrow there at the ATA. I mean, it's a big deal. The biggest names in trucking are out there right now. And of course, Sir Rick is there along with them. So
I mean, not only trucking, but trucking and regulations, and that's really what's good. I mean, I joke about the parking. They've been talking about it how long, but it all starts with a conversation. We got to continue to beat that drum and make it.
I'm ready to spend some money. I mean, I'm ready for us, somebody somewhere, somehow, us to find a way to spend money for safe parking for our drivers out there on the road. And let me say you what. Guess what? ATRI announced yesterday at the conference yesterday. They announced the biggest concern in the United States when it comes to trucking right now, at this moment. What do you think it is?
Supply chain.
Fuel. The cost.
Okay, fuel supply chain.
Yeah, the cost of fuel. The cost of fuel has made it to number one, and I think I understand why.
Yeah, $5 and something a gallon. I got it.
Yeah, and that's the average around the country. Yeah. Wait till you get out to California. It's well above that. Yeah. I mean, you're really putting in it. Those numbers fly. They're just a blur when you've got the handle squeezed. They don't even. I don't even. It's like a jackpot machine. Just let go and whoa! I'm a loser.
Yeah, there's no way to get back. I'll put in $10 and it get a match right because it goes so fast. There's no way when you release it, it's still got 5 more cents going on.
Oh yeah, it's something else going on right now, and I'll tell you that is one of the largest concerns. And ATRI says that is the largest concern right then out there in trucking is the price of fuel. And at some point we've got to get this under control. Look, I don't want to take a lot of time right here at the news desk talking a little bit. We've got Kenny Ray coming on, and we're going to talk about the crash preventability, and we'll do that right after this message, and we're going to bring Kenny Ray back. Don't go anywhere because it's all about safety. I need you here today.
It is all about safety here on BCB Live, the safest station in the nation.
All right, I like how he throws that in there every time. I dig that. We'll be right back. All right, and we are back. Drive Safe Dave, Double Check Dale, and we are sitting here in great anticipation. Have on the line Kenny Ray. I know y'all are all throwing up those heart signs on the social media, but we got Kenny Ray. How you doing out there, Kenny?
I'm doing good, Dave. And yourself?
Man, couldn't be better. A little more overweight than I would like to be, as usual, but I'm trying to work through that, and it's something I got to come to terms with.
Same here, brother.
Let me talk to you. All right, so let's talk about crash preventability determination program. I would like very much for you, Kenny, to explain what it is, what it means, and what some of the results are.
You know, Dave and Dale, a lot of times when the federal government does something, it's not always in the best interest of trucking. But this is a program they did that has been extremely, and how many extremely's you want to put in that sentence, beneficial for our industry. FMCSA has always collected data on crashes, and you have to go back to their definition of a recordable accident, and it's basically a commercial motor vehicle operating on a public highway, involved in a collision, and one of three things results. There's either a fatality, someone dies, or there's injuries requiring treatment away from the scene, or a vehicle must be towed due to disabling damage. If any of those things occur, that simply meets the definition of a DOT recordable crash. At that point, a motor carrier, a trucking company, BCB, has to do something with that crash. And what they have to do is record it on their accident register. FMCSA also does something with that, and they post it to the carrier's profile in the SAFER system. Now, therein lies the issue. Traditionally, it just sat there and there wasn't any big deal. But now, the public has access to the data in the SAFER system. And so now, the general public, plaintiffs' attorneys, and insurance underwriters can all see that those crashes appear on a motor carrier's profile within the USDOT data system. The problem is that trucking companies never had a way to say, hey, yes, we were involved in a crash, but we had nothing to do with it. It wasn't our fault. It was non-preventable. And in the past, DOTs just turned a deaf ear to that. However, once Congress was notified of that by some trucking companies and advocacy groups, Congress said to FMCSA, y'all got to do something about this. This system isn't fair. So in July of 2017, 5 years ago, the FMCSA started a 2-year pilot program, ran from July of 17 to July of 19, and they said this, on the number eight very specific types of crashes, we will review, if a motor carrier submits a crash report, we will review that to determine, is there any way we can determine preventability versus non-preventability? During that 2-year period, FMCSA looked at 5,600 crashes that were submitted to them, 5,600. Now, you ask about results. Now, this is the pilot program from 5 years ago. FMCSA found that 94%, Dale, let that sink in, 94% of the crashes that were submitted for them to review were found to be non-preventable. The federal government stepped in and said there was nothing the motor carrier could have done to keep this crash from happening. So with those kind of phenomenal results, they shifted gears in July of 2019 and to present and made the pilot program into a permanent program. Effective actually August 1st of 2019, and it's still running today. Whereas they originally looked at 8 different types of crashes, they upped that to 16 different types of crashes that they'll now look at. A motor carrier can submit a request for a review through the data queue system in the FMCSA portal, and FMCSA will look at the crash, and they will either issue a ruling that this crash was preventable, it was non-preventable, or they will say it doesn't meet the criteria for the program. Now, to date, still looking at the number that they've looked at, the success rate for motor carriers is still over 94%. which means 94 of every 100 that are submitted for review are found to actually be non-preventable. That is, in the motor carrier's favor. Now, if they get ruled in the favor of the motor carrier, several good things happen for the trucking industry. Number one, it's not used, the crash is not used in the calculation of your crash basic in the CSA. It will not be used by an auditor when they come in to calculate your accident frequency. And something important for a driver is it will show up on the driver's PSP, the pre-employment review program, as being a non-preventable crash. Now, the crash doesn't go away. There's a myth about that. It still remains on there because DOT says the reason we collect this data is to just collect data. We want to know how many crashes there are out there. The problem was how the data was being used once it was posted to the public site. So now what we get is a stamp basically on the motor carrier's website that the federal government says this was a non-preventable crash, and very beneficial for our industry.
You know, and really, I think most of the carriers in that 94% presented them when they were non-preventable, right? I mean, if they were genuinely at fault, they're not going to submit a challenge, is what we like to call it, a challenge on the ruling if we were at fault or had been ticketed for it. But if it truly was an accident that's non-preventable, that's when the carrier needs some relief, and that's when they went for it. And I think that's the reason for the success rate. Don't you agree, Kenny?
Absolutely. And in fact, Dave, you hit a tremendous point. I do a lot of teaching. Y'all both know this. I do a lot of teaching across the country, and this is one of the subjects I teach on. And I always admonish as sternly as I possibly can for a motor carrier not to submit a crash if there is the least indication that they were at fault, that it was a preventable crash, if the trooper shows any kind of remarks in contributing factors of the driver. Because know this, if the crash that a motor carrier submits to the program fits the criteria of the program, it's one of those 16 types, you do everything right, FMCSA is going to issue a ruling. Now, we want that ruling to be non-preventable, but they will issue preventable. So think about that. If 94% of them have been ruled as non-preventable, that means 6% of them have been actually ruled by the federal government as being preventable. They post that on their website. So heaven forbid why a trucking company would want the federal government to publicly put on a website, yeah, you had a crash, and yes, it was preventable. It basically takes away any defense you would ever have in any sort of litigation. So it is much better not to submit one to the program than to submit one that you absolutely know ahead of time you're going to lose.
Hey, Kenny, that is great information there. So can you tell us a little bit what types are challengeable, which ones we go after?
Yeah, and Dale, the easiest thing for any of your listeners, for motor carriers, drivers to do, for y'all to do, is to go to the FMCSA Crash Preventability. They have their own website. You can just get on Google, whatever search engine you use, and type in FMCSA Crash Preventability Determination Program, and it'll bring you to the website. And this is one time where the federal government, the educational material that they developed is very, very good. Whoever did it did a really good job. And they have a guide of how to submit the challenge, that used the term Dave used. It tells how to actually go in and submit the data queue. And then they have a guide to the 16 different types of crashes. And one thing neat, they put a little diagram of each one of them, the different types. For instance, if y'all had a truck sitting at a red light or a stop sign doing absolutely nothing wrong, the driver is simply sitting there waiting for the light to turn green, or it's his turn to go at the stop sign, and somebody, a four-wheeler, runs into the back of the trailer. And there was nothing the driver could do. He had nowhere to go. He couldn't stop the other car. He couldn't do anything. There's a diagram within this material that they developed that shows those type of crashes. And there's a diagram for all 16 of them. I mean, they range everything from striking an animal on the highway to certain kinds of debris in the road. If you're driving down an interstate highway and a car comes off of an entrance ramp or runs into the side of the trailer, they're all listed. All 16 of the kind are listed. Now, I want to tell y'all, while we're talking about these 16 types, FMCSA is absolutely dogmatic to the point of zero variability of deviating from the 16 type. It has to fit absolutely perfectly. This, in my opinion, is still the one weakness of the program, is because there are some crashes out there that, number one, they're not the fault of the motor carrier. They also are non-preventable, but because they don't precisely fit, exactly fit one of those 16 types, FMCSA simply rejects the challenge and says this crash is not considered for preventability because it doesn't meet the guidelines. We're hoping, now think about this, in the pilot program they looked at 8 types, we're now up to 16. We hope that as the federal government, gets more and more comfortable with how they're issuing these rulings and how they're making these determinations, we're hoping that they will add additional categories, because there's some more that need to be added that right now simply aren't. So the easiest thing to do, short of just going down that, and I can go down the list for you, but there's some other things I'd rather share with you, but it's easiest just to get on the website and look at the 16 types. They even give you examples of crashes that fit that type and crashes that don't. They have a column with a green check in it, and they have a column with a red X in it. And so it tells you, don't submit these kind. We're not even going to look at them. These are the kind we will submit. But it's the classic things you think of. A truck sitting at a red light getting run into the back, a truck going, having the right of way through an intersection, and a car slamming into it at the side. Those sorts of things that everybody would readily identify as being, non-preventable crashes. The problem is in the details, because a trooper, what you'll always need to do is look at the crash report and read what the narrative says, look at the diagram in the crash report, always look at the segment that shows contributing factors, make sure they didn't put any contributing factor on your driver. And it's just a very, very careful analysis of the crash report that you have versus that document. And I want to tell y'all, that document is really important, even to the point, and y'all know I'm sitting on the side of the road in my car. I'm out working today, but I'm just going to show you, I just keep a copy of it with me all the time. It's about a 10-page document, and it's got, all the diagrams of the pictures. And this document is so handy that I keep it with me all the time in case a client calls and says, hey, we're thinking about challenging this crash. Does it fit the program? And I'll look in there and see. So the FMCSA did a really good job designing the educational material that goes along with this program.
Did you, and as you deal and as you educate, and I know a lot of people are putting in, but I'll tell you, I think, and Kenny, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot don't really know that you can challenge, right? I mean, you meet and talk to individuals in the trucking industry that aren't aware of this when you first meet first make their acquaintance, correct?
Absolutely, Dave. And that's one of the reasons I was so proud when you and Rick and BCB kicked this program off in its infancy, BCB Live. And when you have Bob and Dale on there, I just, because there's a lot of people other than your employees, your drivers, your customers that listen to this program. And so I always, every time you all ask me to be a part of it, and I'm grateful y'all have asked me several times to be your guest, I always use that as a platform to educate people. This is never about Kenny Ray. It's always about the topic that we're talking about. And you're right. I cover all of Texas and all of Oklahoma for my company, and I come across companies all the time, good motor carriers, that don't even realize this program exists. And it's been highly publicized. It's in all of the trade journals. And again, I go back to my opening statement. This is one of the things the federal government did that is very, very good for our industry. And the fact that 94% of the properly submitted challenges are being found to be non-preventable in the favor of the motor carrier, it's a travesty that we're not using this tool more. Because it really will help a company, and it helps a company in very practical ways on that CSA score, on their crash basic, on crashes being eliminated from consideration during an audit, and for their drivers having the notation placed on their PSP that this was a non-preventable crash. So it's really, really important that more motor carriers utilize this program, but it's equally important to know that they only need to submit the ones that they know absolutely will not be ruled against them. Those are the ones that, you know, when the program first came out, I heard some very arrogant people in this industry say, well, I'm going to challenge every single one of them. That's a terrible idea. Because if your driver was at fault, if there were things your driver could have done to prevent this crash, and I hope we'll take, and I know you've got time constraints, I hope y'all will let me explain the difference between at fault and preventability, but if a company knows that the crash was preventable, they don't need to submit, because this actually will hurt you. I mean, you don't want the federal government ruling that you were involved in a crash that you could have prevented. That's a kiss of death on your insurance premiums, and it's a kiss of death on any litigation in case you're sued.
Yeah, you can. We preach and we talk about preventability and fault and at fault. And go ahead, Kenny. Just go ahead and talk us through it so that everybody understands about how. Because we also talk about how important it is about preventability and about at fault. Because we believe the mindset of the driver should always want to prevent an accident whenever possible. It doesn't matter if you have the right of way. You want to prevent the accident and do everything that you can to prevent. I don't care if you have right of way. I want you to do everything you can to not, you know, if you got to yield right of way to stop an accident, that's what you should do. And I think you should explain right now in insurance terms preventability versus at fault.
Yeah, and Dave, you just hit the nail on the head. I mean, you did as good an explanation as I could. You know, and we're all around truck drivers all the time, and most people know, because I've been on your program enough, but if they don't, I'm the son of a truck driver, and I've got two little brothers that are driving as we speak. Even though I'm a retired state trooper, I'm as pro this industry. I eat, live, and breathe trucking. I love it with all my heart. But y'all know, every single time that we have a driver involved in a crash, the very first words out of that driver's mouth almost always are, "It wasn't my fault." And we need to understand this program we're talking about today has nothing to do with fault. It has to do with preventability. And fault is a legal term. That's something the law enforcement's looking to decide who caused this accident that I can take enforcement action again. I can write a ticket against. Preventability is a much higher standard. Preventability, in fact, the National Safety Council defines preventability, and they say this, they say it's a collision, a preventable crash is a collision in which a driver failed to do everything reasonable to prevent that crash. Now, I often ask trucking companies when I go in and do an audit or teach for their drivers, I'll say, is there a way we can eliminate all truck crashes? The answer to that is actually yes, we can. We can park every one of these trucks on a yard and not move any freight, and we will have no truck crashes. We'll have no truck crashes. But that's not a reasonable move, okay? So a reasonable move, I'll give you a classic example, and I'll make this really, really quick because I know we're coming up on our time, but y'all picture the Texas Panhandle where you can just see forever. And you've got a truck on a 4-lane U.S. highway, not an interstate because interstates have controlled access and exit, but a 4-lane U.S. highway where you have state and county roads intersecting the highway. You got a driver that's on a truck driver on that 4-lane highway, and off to his right, he sees a county or a state FM road that's going to intersect that, and he sees a 4-wheeler blasting down that road, okay? Now, that truck driver, because he or she is experienced out here every day, can gauge speeds on cars just as well as the highway patrol can. And that driver says, you know what? that car is going to get to that intersection at exactly the same time I'm going to get to that intersection. I have the right of way. He's got a stop sign. So if the truck driver did nothing but just kept on going, proper speed, his hours of service is good, equipment's in good shape, and that idiot runs that stop sign and goes under that truck and dies, everyone would agree the truck driver wasn't at fault. The truck driver had the right of way. But was that crash preventable? Most people would say yes. The driver could have backed off the cruise control. He could have tapped the brakes. It wouldn't have taken much change in his speed to that guy may still have run that stop sign, but he run it right in front of the truck and goes across and ends up in a cotton field in the panhandle. But so the difference between fault and preventability is enormous. And what this program judges or makes a determination of, was the crash preventable? So they always look at factors way beyond fault as to whether or not the driver could have done anything reasonable to keep the crash from happening.
You know, and I think I like the fact that I get that they make that determination. However, also, Kenny, I think it's important to know that we all have that responsibility. Every single one of us behind the wheel needs to understand that if we want to make a difference not only in this industry, but we want to make a difference between how all those people die on the roads, we've got to understand we have an opportunity to be better at being better at preventability than we are at fault, because fault can be easily, that's not really where it matters, right?
No, it's about being preventable. It's about doing everything reasonable to prevent that accident.
And I think that's important. But that's not what this program does or says. This program is to measure preventability on any accident with a challenge in place. I think one of my favorites, Kenny, is this one: rare or unusual type of crash when the CMV was involved in a crash set type that seldom occurs and is not eligible in any of the other types. That's kind of.
And Dave, you and Dale both know truck drivers encounter some weird stuff out on the road. There's even been occasions where a vehicle, and not always an 18-wheeler, but sometimes a vehicle be going down the highway, and something like a skydiver, a guy with a parachute that got blown off course, lands in the highway or hits the car, just bizarre, weird things happening. So FMCSA put that category in there for any kind of odd, strange, weird stuff like that. But, and I know we're to the end. I want to wrap up on an encouraging note. Even though the standard for this program is preventability, which is a higher standard than fault, we all agree with that.
Agreed.
Just know that still 94% of these crashes that are being submitted to this program, when they're properly submitted, are being ruled in favor of the trucking company. This is good news for our industry. None of us want to see crashes. I wish I could wave a magic wand and make them all go away. But the fact is, when they occur and they are non-preventable on the motor carrier's part, we now have a mechanism in place to get a little bit of relief from some of that scrutiny that our industry is under because of these crashes.
Do you anticipate, Kenny, and I'm going to ask, do you anticipate that the number will increase from 16 to a greater number? Because I know some of the instances like side swiping on the side of in a lane, that's not allowable under the ruling. But do you anticipate that this will encompass more and be a greater scope in the near future?
I do, and I hope that occurs. FMCSA getting a lot of pressure from industry to add to these categories. They've been pretty resistant to this point. They're still using COVID as an excuse, saying, our people are still working from home, we're overloaded, we can't take on anything else right now. They can't hire enough qualified people to actually do the reviews. But at some point, I think because based on the success of this program, at some point they're going to have to open it up, because there's some crashes, Dave, that you just said occur that they absolutely clearly were non-preventable on behalf of the motor carriers, and we can't even submit them for review because they don't meet one of those very rigid 16 categories. So my hope is that happens. So far, they've been resistant of doing that.
And by the way, I'm just going to ask real quick, where do the determinations are displayed on any and all? Because this is all public information, correct, Kenny? When a crash is deemed non-preventable, it's public information, correct?
Yeah, and where you access that through the SAFER system, there now will be, where it shows up the crashes, there now will simply be a notation there that it was ruled non-preventable by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety. And I've actually already seen some of the PSPs the drivers get. So when y'all are hiring drivers and, it shows that driver had a crash in the past, I've seen now the notations on the PSP where not only did the motor carrier receive the favorable ruling, but the driver that was in that truck, it still shows up on his PSP, but there's now a notation. And again, I can't tell you how important that's a stamp of approval, if you will, from the federal government that, hey, this driver he did nothing that contributed to this crash. So it's both on the posting, the public posting for the motor carrier and the PSP for the driver.
Thank you very much, Kenny. Hey, and as always, I appreciate you coming on and talking a little bit. The next time that we invite you on, I want you to come in studio. I'd love to see you here in studio.
I'll do it. Dave and Dale, y'all are two of my favorite folks. Tell Bob hello. Tell Rick I said hello. And Miss Bryce for putting it all together. Thank y'all for having me.
All right. Thanks a lot, Kenny.
Thank you, Kenny.
Hey, what a great program. And I tell you what, when Kenny Ray gives it the stamp of approval on the Cash Preventative Program, what an issuance it is, right?
Yeah, I mean, that guy is just such a wealth of information and knowledge, and I just love the way he shares it and puts it in layman's terms so we all can understand it.
Oh, absolutely. He tells the best story ever. All right, I don't think we need to go to a break. Why don't we just go ahead and go into what we're talking about? Because you're talking about, what is the safety topic this week? We're all excited. It's Monday.
It's Monday. We
got a new safety topic. What is the new safety topic, Dale?
Emergency signals, triangles. And this kind of brought up because we looked at a video last week where a driver had triangles out. And so we're going to kind of explore a little bit more about triangles this week, when to send them out, how they should be set out, what the criteria is. And today it's 392.22b. Whenever a commercial motor vehicle is stopped upon the traveled portion or shoulder of a highway for any cause other than necessary traffic stops, the driver shall, as soon as possible, but in any event within 10 minutes, place the warning devices. 3 bi-directional emergency reflective triangles are the warning devices that need to be set out. So I mean, most of the time drivers don't realize that there is a time limit on to get them set out. And they kind of lollygag, or they don't put them out at all. And it's very specific. It's a 10-minute time frame. Hey, make sure you get those 4-way flashers on first and then set those triangles out, because it's all about, those triangles do the same thing, only a little better about warning others that, hey, there's a disabled vehicle, a distressed vehicle ahead of us, gives them some advanced warning communication with them.
Yeah, and we're going to go into more detail about the triangles. And I tell you, I've had a lot of trucks turned into me. I've had a lot of people turn over trucks or go out and inspect a truck, Dale. And I'm going to be honest with you, there are many times I'll find triangles in disrepair, and they're broken. Yeah. And they're just not fixed. I mean, that's part of your pre-trip, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It is part of your pre-trip. It's part of that safety equipment that is required to be on that vehicle. And so you want to make sure that you have the 3 bi-directional things, that they're in good working orders. Hey, they come in a nice little case. They're not that hard to put back together and put in that case. Put them someplace, store them, you know. Hopefully you never need them, but if you do, you got to have them. You want to have them in working condition.
You want to be able to put them out quickly, and I'm telling you, and he's being honest with you, because sometimes when they get put out, they get broken, they get messed up or what have you, and then they try to put them back in the box. Or sometimes people just drive off and leave triangles.
Yep.
I've seen that happen a few times. But what's necessary is the law. They are required in all commercial vehicles. They are required to be in there, those triangles. Make sure that they're in there, and make sure that they're not broken. And when you do pull over, get them out there.
Yeah.
Get them out there. You get a flat, put your triangles out. You should, before you do any of the other stuff, Go put your triangle, communicate with everybody, and put them out. You're going to talk a little more this week on how to put them out, right?
Yeah, at what locations, depending on where you are on the roadway, what roadways it is there. So, we'll talk a little bit more about the objective, the safe way of doing it too, because I've seen some drivers, man, do some very unsafe things when they broke down. And I know, it's frustrating. They're in a hurry, but man, you cannot take the safety of yourself out of the equation as you're putting triangles out. Think about what you're doing before you go do it.
Okay, let me just tell you a secret. Nobody chooses where they break down.
No.
You just don't choose where you break down. However, you do what you do at that point, it is your choice.
Those are your choices.
Those are your choices. And what to do quickly and effectively. Make sure that you are reflected when you go out there. Make sure you have a light. Make sure that people can see you when you're setting out your triangles.
Yep.
I mean, it's very important, right? But
Yep.
get them out there within 10 minutes. All right, we got a couple of minutes. Let's see if we got any videos. You want to throw some videos up there? Let's go through a couple, Dale.
Yeah, let's look at some.
Now, there's a couple of things here that I think I wanted you to see, Dale, on this video. The driver actually slows from this video and increases the space. You see the red box?
Yeah.
Well, it goes from 0.8 all the way to 1.2, and by the end, you've extended the distance between the vehicle in front and the vehicle in here. See, it turns green, blinking green. It's getting there, right?
Yep. Just lifted off the accelerator a little bit. No brakes were involved. Just realized I'm too close.
And a positive reaction occurred. I mean, I'm telling you, it's necessary to understand that good things are going about as this happens, right?
Dave, how much time do you think he lost by slowing down a little bit, increasing that
But
space?
by 0.2 of a second, how much do I think he lost time?
Yeah.
0.2 of a second, if none at all.
There you go. There you go. So being safe doesn't take any more time.
Not at all. All right, next video.
It's the nighttime, and again, we always talk about as conditions change, we have to change our driving habits, and we have to increase that space. And driver in this one hasn't done it yet. Hopefully, in a little bit, starts backing off, gets the message that, hey, I'm too close, need to increase my following distance because I can't see as big a picture because it is dark and I am too close.
Yeah, and I just want you to see that the other people in the video are also too close.
Yeah. They're in a pack. It's nighttime.
Yeah, it's everybody's too close. Back off!
Yeah.
All right, next video.
Another pack.
Where are you going?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so I watched this video, and I watched this for a little bit. And you watch this, and do you really think somebody's going to cut in front of you and get in that space there next to those two? At this point, it's best just to back off and let these two guys figure out what they're doing.
Yeah, get away from it so if something goes wrong that
you don't
you're
want
back
to be,
out of that.
Y'all are traveling at 55 miles an hour, and I'm going to tell you right now, y'all may not know this, but two big trucks tangled up at 55 miles an hour can be a scary situation you don't want any part of. I can assure you that. All right, I like the little arrow, but there's a lot to say here. We did this last week. We talked about trains last week.
Yes, we did. And so when I saw this one, I threw that in right away because, it's a stop sign. It's on private property. There's tracks involved with it. Stop. Stop. I mean, that's what you mean. I mean, right, Dave?
First of all, it's a stop sign. You're required to do so. But also, you got railroad tracks here. And I want you to see, if somebody's coming the other way from where you're going, like proceed forward. Now, how much room is between these two vehicles?
Not a lot.
And if a car or a vehicle came along and started to pull in there and you had to stop, guess what you would be stopping on?
Tracks.
Yeah.
Train tracks.
Need to think this one through a little bit, right? Honestly, come to a complete stop, look down the tracks, make sure it's clear in front of you. Understand, I think that's one of the main reasons why there's a stop sign there. Is because they want you to make sure that you're not going to wind up stopping or stalling on the track.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that there's an additional sign underneath the stop sign warning you about the railroad tracks is really saying, folks, take this seriously. That's live tracks here. There could be a train.
And I know it's private property, and I know they don't have bells, and they don't have whistles, and they don't have gates or lights or any of that stuff going on. But I'll tell you, they can be just as dangerous as trains. A slow-moving train is a dangerous train. I want everybody to understand it still can't stop on a dime.
Yeah, and then whether it's on private property or not, it still has the right of way.
It's a train. But yeah, I mean, as we talk about those and as we look at those, hey man, thanks for coming in, Dale, and talking to us
Always
about
a pleasure.
Triangle. And what we will do, and I hope everybody, we will see y'all tomorrow at 12 o'clock, and we'll have another great interview tomorrow. But thanks, and hey, thanks for jumping on and watching us on here on BCB Live.
The safest station in the nation.
Every time. See you, everybody.
Peace out.